Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, except today's Tuesday, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I got there, folks, and no one had to tell me either. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino. Pearson Bartler shrugging his shoulders, working the controls there, worried about me messing more stuff up. We'll take your calls at 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. I should note today is not Wednesday because the schedule gets released on Wednesday, and that is tomorrow, not today.
Correct.
So just keep that in mind. We should have word on the schedule at 8 o'clock tomorrow. That is when the teams and the league will release the schedule for 2024.
They've let some drips out.
Yes.
You know, a few drips, as we say.
So why don't we talk about a couple of those drips, Paul?
Okay.
So here's what we know so far, and it kind of relates back to the Giants as well. So we know the opening Thursday game of the year is Chiefs-Ravens. We know the opening Friday of the season is Eagles-Packers.
Okay.
We know the Fox national game on Sunday afternoon will be Dallas and the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. We know Monday Night Football, that'll be Tom Brady's first game calling games for Fox. The first Monday night game of the year will be the 49ers and the Jets. So they will hope they don't get another Aaron Rodgers Monday night mishap.
Oh, man.
It's not funny. I'm being sympathetic to Jets fans. No one wants to see that.
But talk about a jinx, right?
I would not like it if I was a Jets fan.
No.
Give me a 1 o'clock game on Sunday.
And you know, why would the NFL and the networks want to tempt fate twice? After all the hype that went into last year and then it fell flat.
And then the first Thursday night Amazon game of the year, so that's the week 2 Thursday game, will be the Dolphins and the Bills. So that's another really good game. And Dallas, the Browns is going to be a good game too. So you have the league, not surprisingly, they haven't announced any, hey, you got the Panthers and the Commanders coming your way at 1 o'clock. We haven't got one of those yet. Right. But all the games that they've announced, we've seen some really good matchups. So this actually does, Paul, impact what the Giants might have in week 1, because we know some things, right?
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say the Giants are going to be home in week 1 because of the 100th anniversary, the 100th season celebration, okay?
Well, it's logical.
I feel like they would want to celebrate at home in week 1.
It's logical.
So, again, that'll allow me to narrow this down a little bit. So, assuming that's the case,
all
right, we know the Giants cannot play the Eagles in week 1. We know the Giants cannot play the Commanders in week 1. We know the Giants cannot play the Ravens in week 1. So that's 3 of the Giants' home opponents that they cannot play in week number 1, because the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Cowboys have all had week 1 games announced already.
Right.
So they cannot. So this is what we're down to for the Giants.
You said Commanders?
No, I said Eagles, Ravens, and the
20 seconds,
Cowboys.
20 seconds ago you said Commanders.
Sorry.
Though.
Eagles, Ravens, Cowboys. Those are the 3 teams. Eagles, Ravens, Cowboys are the 3 teams that cannot play in week 1.
That is accurate.
So the teams, I apologize. So
That's
the 6 teams remaining, because the Giants have 9 home games this year because of the unbalanced schedule with 17 games. So the Bengals, the Vikings, the Colts, the Commanders, the Saints, and the Buccaneers. Now, just from a thematic standpoint, and I got yelled at by Giant fans yesterday, we already know it's going to be the Commanders in week 1. I'm glad that you guys got the schedule before we did. All that stuff, by the way, are rumors, and none of that's official. But just from an historical perspective, you want to, if you're doing your 100th anniversary, you want to play a historical rivalry and matchup of the teams we talked about here, Paul, the Commanders, the Bengals, the Vikings, the Saints, the Bucs, and the Colts. Just from a thematic standpoint, the Commanders would be the team that seems to make the most sense.
Well, with the most games in the series, between Giants history and all the other teams that they've played.
Well, and that team's been around forever, too. So
yeah. So, I absolutely see the math, and I understand that.
The league might not give 2 craps about that, and they could play the Vikings for all we know. But
they may or may not.
Yeah.
The only other attachment, I was talking to Dan Salamone from one of our writers here at Giants.com the other day, and I said, Dan, if you're trying to thread some sense of history to the Giants' 100th season and you want to kick them off with something that smells of tradition.
Ooh, I got a good one.
You could go to the Colts.
That's what I was going to say, for the greatest game ever played, right?
You could.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Because of the 1958 NFL championship game, which, as we all know, is the birth of the modern era of pro football, Colts beat the Giants in overtime at Yankee Stadium. Now, the problem with that one is that this is the Indianapolis Colts, not really the Baltimore Colts. Does that matter? Does that come into play if you're trying to tie the threads of history together?
I mean, same history, though. Like, that is the continuous
there is a
history of the team. Like,
Right.
if you look at the Colts' history, it includes the Baltimore Colts.
There is still a Giants-Colts historical thread that you could weave together if you so desired to. And quite frankly, if that turns out to be the matchup, that will be something that I will try to reminisce about and try to add some flavor to that week when it happens, if it does. Other than the history between the Giants and Washington, I don't see any other really good connection.
I agree.
That's it. There are two where you could thread some history together. That's it. But will that even matter?
Now, we also know that this is almost guaranteed to be a Sunday at 1 o'clock game, right? Because the Fox is going to want to put the Giants up against the Cowboys in the national window at 4 o'clock.
Very, very unlikely.
And they have not announced the Sunday night game.
They have not.
So I guess theoretically it could be the Sunday night game. I did not think about that.
Theoretically, it could.
So it's either going to be the Sunday night or Sunday at 1 would be the two potential times for games.
I suspect probably 1 o'clock more so than the night game.
And I don't think any of these, except for maybe Cincinnati, because of Joe Burrow and they're just a very good football team, that would be the only matchup I would think would be a juicy enough game to put on opening week Sunday night football, right?
Well, here's the thing. You look at Sunday night football and the first game, or even the first Monday night game, which they've already given us, right? We already have that
Monday
locked
night
out.
is the Jets 49ers.
Right, that's already locked out.
And I think a CBS game might have been announced by somebody too, but I did not catch that.
So, with all due respect, my suspicion is that NBC for Sunday Night Football is going to want to use at least one of last season's postseason teams. I would suspect.
Yeah.
I don't think if it's Giants Commanders, Giants Colts, that would not fit that category. And
No.
I suspect the league and the network would want to have at least one postseason team, coming off of a playoff appearance.
Yeah.
That's just a guess.
Agreed. So I would think right now we're looking at Sunday at 1 o'clock, and one of those teams, who knows which one. I don't like playing divisional games in week 1. And I've always the best part of my day yesterday was when I found out the Cowboys were playing the Browns in week 1, because that meant no Giants Cowboys week 1 again, which I hate with the passion of 1,000 blazing suns. But the same argument for why I don't like Giants Cowboys week 1 is the same argument as to why I really wouldn't love Giants Commanders week 1 either, despite the historic rivalry. I want to play your division games after you kind of figure out what these teams are.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Understood.
That'll probably be Jaden Daniels' first ever NFL game. So I think getting him earlier in the schedule is actually probably better than getting him later in the schedule before he figures things out. You might be a little deer in the headlights in week 1. So I guess that would be a good thing. But I don't know. I prefer the division games to come a little bit later when teams, like we always talk about, Paul, it's almost like an extended exhibition schedule, the first couple games in September. I like to get out of that and then start playing your division games, end of September, preferably for me the beginning of October.
I will only throw in a opposite caveat here.
Sure.
And that is, I really, really think it would be a marvelous way to celebrate with an opening day victory. And as I look at the Giants' schedule for the upcoming season, Washington, to me, when you project their potential 53-man roster, would be one of the weaker teams on the Giants' schedule.
Well, I mean, they're rebuilding. They basically are starting their whole franchise over from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a fair point. No argument.
So therefore, if it meant that the Giants would actually be favored in a game against Washington opening day, whether or not you think Washington has an inferior roster or you think a rookie quarterback will be making his debut, I would not object to that at all.
No, and that's fair. I don't have a good argument against that.
So, but that's why, to be frank with you, John, it's funny. The league will determine what they determine, and we're all going to get the schedule, and Coach Brian Dable's going to say, we will play what they throw in front of us. And it really doesn't matter because you still got to go out there and try to win the game.
And I should stand in for Lance Meadow. You don't know who's going to be healthy when these games get played.
No
anyway,
question.
So it's hard to figure out exactly what the impact is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The Giants announced their 100th season celebration yesterday. Go to Giants.com/100 to see all the details on everything the Giants are doing. There's some pretty cool gear right now up on the NFL shop and the Giants online shop, shop.giants.com. Go check it out. Not going to lie, I ordered a little bit. Some good stuff up there. Make sure you go check that out. And we have another special drop on Friday at 10 a.m. The Giants and Starter are collaborating on a special kind of upscale, I forget what do they call it? Style brand? Is that what they call it? Something like that?
Like streetwear, maybe?
Streetwear, maybe? Yeah, something like that. I'll have to actually look up what the details are. But it's cool. It's basically, it's being branded in 1925. You can see the pictures up on the website. The Giants have it out there. There's in the little right-hand column. Just click on the story. And basically, no Giants logo. It just says 1925, which is, of course, the year of the Giants founding. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool stuff.
Carl Banks deal.
Yep. Starter.
Yep.
So it's very cool.
Yep.
I would go check that out.
One thing I did want to mention, because I got a couple of questions about it, was about the 100th celebration book. From what I understand from looking at the website, and I didn't see any other details, that it will be available online sometime in September.
September, yes.
So don't panic, if you can't get your hands on one right away. Trust me, by the time the season gets going, you'll be able to find it.
Yes, it will be out in September. Dan Salomon and Mike Eisen were two of the people here, among others, that put a ton of work into that book. Doug Murphy did a lot of the photos and stuff, putting all that together. So, yeah, that'll be out in September. Make sure you check that out. So, one of the things the Giants are doing with their 100th celebration is a bracket challenge. So, basically, we're giving fans a chance to select the greatest plays in Giants history. We have 4 16-play brackets. Fans will have a chance to vote through them each of the next few weeks. The first one is going on right now. That's the blue bracket. And then we'll have new ones coming up each of the next few weeks. You can check out the Giants Huddle podcast on your Giants app, podcast platforms everywhere, giants.com/podcast. Bob Pop and I do a breakdown of the blue bracket, so make sure you go check that out. I thought it would be fun for Paul and I very quickly to kind of go through these plays today just to have an idea of exactly, what the plays are. We can pick winners, I guess. I mean, a lot of these, I think, the 116, 215s, I think those are going to be a little self-explanatory. But why don't we start here with top of the bracket? Let's go the Mark Bavaro play against the Niners in 86, where he carries, 6, 7, 8 49ers on his back down the middle of the field. And then that's going up against Jimmy Patton, who's someone that we talked about the other day, Paul. Great defensive back. He had a punt return and kickoff return for a touchdown in the same game. So 2 really good plays there. But I think given the modernity of it, I think Bavaro probably has the advantage here.
Well, sure. I mean, younger fans probably don't even know much about Jimmy Patton. And, what he did with those 2 touchdowns, that was the first time in NFL history that someone had actually accomplished that feat. Having said that, and as historical as it is, the Bavaro play, not only did it help make him an iconic legend in Giants history, but it was part of the championship fabric of the Parcells teams. I mean, if you want to use a play just to kind of exemplify what that era of Giants football was about and what those Giants were about. Remember, they were blue collar. Parcells called his offensive line the Suburbanites because these guys weren't anything fancy. They just went out there and they slugged you. So, for me, the Bavaro play kind of transcends just the X's and the O's of what was on the field. So for me, I would, I don't know. Did you want my vote? I vote for Bavaro.
Yeah, shocking. All right, next matchup.
Hey,
Paul.
I got great respect for Jim Patton. Trust me. And as we mentioned yesterday, Dick Lynch and him were extremely tight. So I totally, and Patton hit like a truck. He was a safety who absolutely banged into people. Great player. But I gotta go with Bavaro transcending the game.
Yeah, and one of our great listeners, by the way, called up and corrected me on something. I referred to Emlyn Tunnell as a cornerback the other day.
He was a safety.
To him as a defensive back or a safety.
Oh, I don't remember you saying he was a corner.
I think I might have. I remember we were talking about the cornerback deals, and I think I included Tunnell in that conversation, but he wasn't a corner. So that was my mistake. I was not.
You were just talking DBs, I thought.
Yeah, maybe.
All right.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Whatever.
yes.
Either way, he was not a cornerback. He was a safety.
If I had heard that, I would have corrected you.
I know you would.
Okay.
Anyway, next matchup here, Paul. We got a few calls on, so maybe we'll go half the bracket, then we'll get to our calls here.
Yeah.
OC's 6th sack against Donovan McNabb and the Eagles. That, of course, was that historic game where the Giants sacked McNabb double-digit times.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is an interesting one because I'm sure OC is going to get all the young fans' votes. But Sam Huff stopping Jim Brown in 1958. They played multiple games in a row that year, if I remember, right, Paul? And they played them for the division, then the championship, and then the Super Bowl. It wasn't Super Bowl yet. It was the NFL championship.
Right.
But Sam Huff helped shut down Jim Brown in a couple of those games. And that was a time where Jim Brown was the best player in the league. Running back was the most important position in the league. And Sam Huff and that Giants defense really slowed him down in those 2 games to help win the Giants a championship.
Well, let's start with talking about Jim Brown. It had been said, legend had it, that Jim Brown was never stopped for a loss on a running play. Now, that, of course, is more of a legend than it is fact. But the truth of the matter is, it was extremely hard to bring him down behind the line of scrimmage. That's what made him so incredibly special, is because you were talking about positive yardage every time he touched the ball. Now, the Giants, Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator at the time, and he had decided we need to stop him. So what they did, they created the 4-3 defensive attack where instead of the defensive lineman would just go upfield and try to play standard defense, just try to beat your guy and get to the ball or get to the quarterback, Tom said, no, that's not what we're going to do, okay? I want my 4 guys to clog up as many blockers as possible because I want to free up Sam Huff, our middle linebacker, to give him the chance to use his vision and to be able to then go and attack Jim Brown at the point of entry at the line of scrimmage. So he was more concerned, Landry that is, free up my middle linebacker and allow him to roam and make the plays. He was the heartbeat of the defense. Those 4 defensive linemen were now assigned to basically clog up the blocking mechanism as opposed to just trying to go upfield at the snap. This was incredibly innovative, John. This is why Tom Landry was viewed as a defensive genius when he was the Giants' defensive coordinator there in the late 50s. And so he, more than anybody, was responsible for Sam Huff being what he was as a Hall of Fame middle linebacker. Remember, Sam almost quit. He actually quit the Giants. He was done. He was so despondent by the way things had originally turned out. He quit. And they had to convince him to come back and actually have a career. And Landry used him in this fashion. So there is tremendous historical significance when you consider the Sam Huff against Jim Brown. Great historical significance. Now, the problem is, this is a play vote. It's a play bracket. This is not historical significance of the legendary matchups between Brown and Huff. It's about a particular play. Well, we all know what OC did. OC with the 6 sacks. Winston Justice was making his first NFL start that night. And I remember saying to myself, oh my OC's going to eat this guy alive, because he wasn't a very good player as it was, and they had an injury, and I forget who their tackle was, but he was hurt, and Winston Justice was going to make his start, and you knew the Giants were going to exploit him. I think OC beat him for 5 of the 6 sacks, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right.
Okay, and it was because of OC's cat-like quickness off the line of scrimmage. OC, in my opinion, had the quickest get off at the snap of any defensive end that I had ever seen. And I still feel that way. And he just obliterated Philadelphia's offense by himself with the 6 sacks. So quite frankly, I would pick OC with that 6 sack if I had to pick a play between those 2.
All right, let's go to our next matchup. You have the Knicks Hail Mary at the end of the 2011 NFC second round game against the Green Bay Packers. That was a divisional round. End of the first half, a 37-yard Hail Mary, Manning to Knicks, which kind of put a big stamp on that game that the Giants really dominated start to finish. And against that is the sneakers game. A Ken Strong 42-yard run for a touchdown. This is the 1934 championship game. The story here is that the field was in such bad shape. Basically, the Giants went to a local school and got basketball
Manhattan
sneakers for
College.
everybody.
Manhattan College.
And they all wore basketball sneakers at the game, and this is the Polo Grounds. And they ended up winning the game and winning the championship because they had better footing than their opponent. So those are the two. That's the matchup here.
Field was so frozen that the cleats wouldn't work. And so in those days, they didn't have multiple styles of cleats, with the little ones that you can temporarily screw out and screw in for different lengths and everything. They didn't have any of that. So the equipment manager winds up going down to Manhattan College with this idea that, let me get sneakers. We'll have better traction than they will. And so that's the history. There are actually 2 sneakers games in Giants history. This is one of them. There's that game, and then you talk about the Knicks play. Hakeem Nicks, believe it or not, was only 6'2", but he played like 6'4".
He might have been listed at 6'1.5", to be honest.
He had such length in his arms and the biggest hands of any receiver that I've ever met. Remember, when he got here...
No, he had monster hands.
When he got here, they give the rookies equipment, right? They say, here, everybody test out the equipment. They gave Hakeem Nicks the biggest size XL receiver gloves that they found, and he couldn't fit in them. He could not fit in them. His hand was too big. So they had to get special order gloves for Knicks's clutches. I would vote for, even though the sneakers game is historic, I'm going to vote for Knicks because, to be frank with you, John, in the 42 seasons, now it's going to be the 42nd season covering Giants football, I can count on one hand or less how many Hail Mary passes were completed for a touchdown. In fact, in Giants history, going back now 100 seasons, I don't think there are even more than a handful ever.
I have a non sequitur random question. So we have ESPN on behind here, and they're doing I don't know anything about hockey, so pardon me if I say something stupid here. So they have one of their hockey analysts on, PK Subban?
Yes, Subban.
Okay, a former NHL player apparently.
Yes.
Is he doing his hit from the hotel room wearing a bathrobe?
It looks that way.
That's all I was going to ask. Dude's wearing a bathrobe. I mean, God bless your confidence, I guess, but can you put a shirt on? You're on TV, dude.
COVID did a lot to lower the standards of looks on television.
I mean, he's got a nice setup. You have the Freedom Tower in the background.
Yes.
I mean, it's a nice little setup. But can I get a shirt? Is that asking too much?
It's not.
I don't think it's asking
I think
too
he
much.
could afford one.
Who did he play for?
Subban was with the Devils, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I followed.
I think Nashville for a couple years.
Might have been Nashville. Yeah, it might have been.
The Predators? Is that the Nashville hockey team? The Predators? Okay.
Yep.
Guys, I don't know anything about hockey. Anyway, all right, so let's do one more matchup here.
And
Paul.
besides, OC and I are
calls.
tight. If I don't vote for OC, he's going to come over from England and squash me.
I think you should really vote for the sneakers game. For the record.
Go ahead.
All right, and then finally, we have our final matchup. These are 2 older plays, so I think this will be interesting. You have Homer Jones, a 98-yard touchdown, the longest until Victor Cruz's 99-yard touchdown in 11. And people don't, by the way, realize how good Homer Jones was. We'll get into that in a second. And then you have the Mark Hayden fumble recovery in the end zone for an 81 playoff win over the Eagles in 81. Just a note on Homer Jones, for people that don't know, he still, I believe, is second in NFL history in yards per catch average.
Number 1.
Oh, he's number 1?
Of those who qualify.
Those who qualify, I'm sorry. I remember he was neck and neck with one guy. So he's
I believe
number
it's
1.
over 22 yards a catch.
It's ridiculous. I mean, his big playability was off the charts. So those are the 2 plays here, Paul.
Homer, his issue was he wasn't very disciplined as a route runner. He had world-class speed. Him and the Bullet, Bob Hayes, who was with the Dallas Cowboys, were the 2 fastest men in the NFL at the time. And, it was always...
It's a great football name, Homer Jones.
Oh, sure.
Great football
No
name.
doubt. And so Homer was thrilled when the Giants had Tarkenton because him and Fran, they were like brothers. And Fran was an improviser, and Homer was an improviser. See, one of the things about Homer was, again, he was very undisciplined with his routes. So he would go out for a pass, and Fran would just know where to look for him. And if Fran had to scramble and improvise, Homer didn't mind because with his speed, he could improvise too. Those 2 guys, for Tarkenton and Homer Jones, we talk all the time now about these mobile quarterbacks who break off routes. And John, you'll often hear people talk about that second route tree within a play. This was the original second route tree. Homer Jones, with the instinctiveness between him and Tarkington, always had the ad-lib routes as a secondary package on every snap. And Homer, who had unbelievable blazing speed, he was tall, he had length, and forget it. If he caught the ball in the open field, he was gone. So you have Homer with the 98-yard touchdown catch, which ironically, I believe is from Earl Morrall. Okay, that's not even a Tarkenton touchdown catch, and it's an Earl Morrall touchdown catch, I believe, against Pittsburgh. I didn't even take a look at it. I mean, this stuff is all in my memory. And then the other play was Mark Haynes against Philadelphia in the 1981 wildcard game down at the Vet in Philadelphia. Again, folks, the thing that you got to watch when you look at that play is how Lawrence Taylor's playing special teams. He's a rookie, and he's down there on special teams and kick coverage, and he's blowing guys up. And poor Wally Henry, the kick returner for the Philadelphia Eagles, just forget about it. Just forget about it. He was a nervous wreck, and the Giants took advantage of him. And he gets hit, ball's popping free, and Mark Haynes, of course, recovers it in the end zone for a Giants touchdown. And the Giants are off and running. They had to hold on at the end of that game when Rob Carpenter was able to run out the clock by grinding it out. We talk about the 4-minute offense all the time, right? Without Rob Carpenter grinding out clock at the end of that game, Philadelphia had come back, and they were surging in the second half, and specifically the fourth quarter, and Carpenter was able to seal a deal and shut the door for the Giants' playoff victory.
Was that the year after they lost to the Raiders in the Super Bowl and Plunkett? 81?
Well, 80. Yeah, this was the 80. This is the end of the 81 season.
This is the year after the Eagles got to the Super Bowl. That's what I'm saying.
And to be frank with you, this was a huge upset in most people's eyes. Of course, not in the Giants' eyes, because they were a blood and guts team that did everything they could and made big plays, and it was the resurgence of the Giants. So their first playoff appearance since the 1963 season. So this was a really big deal to win that playoff game down at the Vet in hostile Philadelphia.
All right, 201-939-4513.
Oh, did I say it? Oh, I'm voting Homer Jones.
Okay, good for you.
The inventor of the spike, by the way.
Don't forget, folks, take your Giants fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. You will have the schedule in just a day, folks. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2024 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And I imagine we'll have single game tickets as well available once we get that schedule released. And then Giants TV, folks, is the Giants' official connected TV streaming app. It brings original video content, game highlights on demand, and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. 201-939-4513. Go to the phones. Jason will lead us off in New Haven. Jason, what's up?
What's going on, fellas?
What's up?
Good. Thanks for taking my call. First of all, let's go Knicks tonight. Let's get that 3-2 lead.
Let's try.
Let's try. I know we're banged up, but
he needs to yell at the Garden tonight.
I will yell.
Yeah,
there you go.
There.
If anything, the Knicks have showed us all year they're very resilient, and you got to really put the stake through our heart to knock us out. So I think we take game 5 tonight. But anyway,
I just hope they have enough energy left in the tank, Jason. There's not a lot of them left.
I know.
The stake has been driven through the heart of Julius Randle, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mitchell Robinson, and OG Anunoby's hamstring at this point. So they don't have many guys left that can play, which is unfortunate.
I know. Well, listen,
meanwhile, the Celtics get to beat the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell. They basically have a little
I know.
The red carpet's been laid out for their trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a joke.
Porzingis is out too. Let's relax.
I think we'll be good. I had my firstborn. My first son was born this morning. So.
Congratulations, Jason. That's great.
Thank you. So we're gonna ride that coattail for a win tonight. But
what's his name? What's his name?
His name is Saint Ashton Benjamin.
Ooh, I like it. Classy.
Yeah,
wow.
Listen, my wife came up with it, so whatever. I like the name, but anyway, thanks, fellas.
Well, if she came up with it, it was the right name.
Jason, just stick with that. Just stick with that line. Whenever I ask you, I love the name. My wife did a great job. That is all you need to say.
Yes. So, but back to the Giants. Thanks, fellas. Paul, I'm with you. Me personally, if I can have my pick. For Week 1 matchup, since the Jets are playing San Fran, I believe, away, I think we'll get that home game. I really want to play the Commanders Week 1. and as a Giants fan, we've come to realize, hey, we shouldn't be calling out any teams as bad as we played the last 3 years.
Good point.
But playing a rookie quarterback, I kind of like that matchup. And if you guys remember, we did extensive work. Now, I'm not saying that's part of it, but we did a lot of extensive work on Daniels and those guys. So
now, Jason, here's the drawback, and this is the game we always play, right? Do you want to get the rookie quarterback in his first game when he might not know what he's doing? But remember, you have 0 NFL film on this guy.
Correct.
You have no idea with a new coach, a new GM, a new quarterback. I mean, no idea what this Commanders offense is going to look like. So they might be able to surprise you with some stuff with the guy as athletic as Daniels that you're not prepared for. That might turn into some big plays that are hard to defend against. So there is a little bit of a give and take there too.
Yeah, I get it. I think our defense is pretty athletic. So those, of course he'll get his yards. Of course, he's an athletic kid, but. This is, he's not playing Mississippi State here. Like, we have some dogs on our defense.
No, I got you.
So I would like that matchup week 1. Second point, I wanted to talk about the young man we signed yesterday, the defensive tackle. I think his name is Chapman.
Chapman, yeah.
Chapman.
Baby Bison from SMU.
Yep. I didn't know too much about him until we signed him, but just looking on the tape, he's very athletic. I called a few weeks ago during the draft. It seems like the Giants, under Shane at least, have really taken a precedence over athletic and looking him up. Now, he's a small guy. I believe he's a little under 6'2". I believe they said
6
he's
feet.
about
6 foot, 278 pounds.
Yeah.
He's 6 foot, 278.
Right. So, I know that's not a prototypical defensive tackle size, and I'm not comparing, him to these greats. I'm not. But as we've seen, Aaron Donald was small. I'm not comparing him as a player, but I'm talking about as the prototypical size. John Randall, in his heyday, I don't even think he was 290, and he was about 6'1", 6'2".
Right.
So we've seen it happen. Now, am I saying this guy's going to make the 53? Absolutely not. He'd have to have a great, great camp to even crack the 53. But I like how Shane just kind of drafts these athletic guys, and he seems like just a mold of clay that Andre Patterson can just play with, not literally, but, play with and see what they could get out of him. 6 feet, 270, 275. But I think he had like 35 reps on the bench, and he ran a 4.8. He shoots gaps. He's very athletic. I like this tape. Of course, that's the only thing I could base it off, and I'm sure, he didn't play top 5 conference teams, but I like the pickup. It's worth the flyer because we've been talking about us getting a 3 technique, someone that can shoot the gaps, not so much a run plugger, which we have up and down our roster, but someone that could, shoot the gap and maybe run some stunts and twists in. He may fit the bill. Second point.
Now, Jason, real quick. I just want to give more. I want to give fans more information on Chapman, and then you can get to your second point. So you're right. 4.81 40-yard dash, 1.71 10-yard split, which is both excellent. 31-inch vertical, 9 foot broad, 9 foot 4 inch broad. Both of those numbers are pretty good. What I like, height doesn't bother me. He does have 32 3/4 inch arms, which is really good arm length for a guy that height, which is good. 32 reps on the bench, which I agree, I like. The 278's low, and I would like those athletic numbers. I maybe even want them to be a little bit better, especially his agility numbers: 4.59 3 cone, 7.85 3 cone. 7.85 3 cone, 4.59 short shuttle. Those are not great. So we'll see, but that's why he was an undrafted free agent, right? And he was here as a tryout. He wasn't even a guy you signed out of the gate.
Right.
So you hope you can develop him. I actually don't mind shorter guys if they have long arms because that allows them to get pretty good leverage. So we'll see, but I generally agree with the way Joe Shane treats his day 3 and his undrafted free agent picks. Pick guys with traits, whether it's size, like a Jordan Riley, athleticism, like a guy like this, or the defensive tackle they signed out of Oregon, and Casey Rogers, right? And then you basically try to develop those traits, and you hope you could turn them into players.
Did you listen to the show yesterday at all?
Oh, no, I was so busy with the wife. I didn't.
And I don't blame you because you were real busy.
Wait, you mean you didn't have it on while your wife was in labor? Jason, what the hell are you doing?
It killed me if you'd heard me listen to the Giants.
Oh, my God, yes, I would imagine.
Point being, and I've said this in many years past, but it does always bear repeating, especially with the larger practice squads that you have today. You've got a section of guys on your practice squad who are real projects who you want to do something with and see if they could be a diamond in the rough. Then you have a few guys on your practice squad who are really there primarily to be scout team players. So what I'm saying is you have a player in Chapman who maybe, if he doesn't work out really well as a prospect or as a project, for whatever reason it doesn't really work out, at the very least, he could be a dynamic 3-technique guy on your scout team who could absolutely help with your offensive line, dealing with a guy who's got some quickness and penetrating skills. So to me, I see that as a win-win. I think he immediately has multiple value as a practice squad player if he doesn't make the 53.
Right. Yeah, I just love the pickup. Kudos to the scouting department to even find this guy. So kudos to them. Last 2 points. Just to go back to the Giants 100, I know you guys talked about the Hakeem Nicks thing, and I remember that play when it was the Packers, the second round of the playoffs.
Yep, 2011.
And when he made that play, I said to my friend who was watching the game at my house, and I was like, we won this game because it just felt like we just took the air out of Lambeau. When he caught that Hail Mary before half, I was like, they're not coming back from that.
Would it
was
make
kind
it
of like
20-3 at halftime? Does that sound right?
It was a multiple score edge.
Yeah, I think it was 20-3.
Yeah, we were up.
That.
We were up quite a bit. But I just felt like when he caught that Hail Mary before half, it looked like it just took everything out the Packers, and I think they just never really recovered after that. I believe they scored in the second half, but by that time the game was pretty much won. So kudos to Hakeem Nicks, and kudos to that 2011 team. You know, so many memories, the 08 and 2011 teams. Just a great time as a Giants fan. The last point.
Yeah, Jason. By the way, that touchdown made it 20-10 Giants, and the Giants went on to win 37-20.
Yeah, 2-score lead.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I just felt like it just took the air out of Lambeau, and Packers just never recovered, even with a Hall of Fame Aaron Rodgers in his prime at the time. It just seemed like they just took the air out of him. And then the last point, and you guys are very well versed in Giants land and football, so this is not directed to you two gentlemen. You guys always have good takes. We're not always 100% right in our takes, but I think we all try to I try to call myself a even-keeled fan.
Yeah.
Take the good and the bad with the team. But, throughout and I know social media ain't everything, so please, God, don't kill me, but just reading and hearing some things about Daboll and Shane being on the hot seat, I mean, some of this stuff I'm just hearing from other fans is just, it really bothers me. I just don't understand why those two gentlemen would be on the hot seat. And like I said, I'm not saying you guys are agreeing or disagreeing with it, but my take is it just feels like the year one, a lot of fans are ready to goat those two guys, Daboll and Shane, and now because of a losing record where the ball just fell downhill, injuries and the schedule, it was just accumulation of just everything just went bad for us. I just don't understand this Shane and Daboll thing where they're on a hot seat. Let's give these guys and I'm not talking to you, but just other fans, where it just seems that everything with them is, a lot of fans are just so negative. Like, give these dudes a chance. Really, this is really, to me, their second off season, in my opinion, because year one, to me, look, I mean, you guys know the cap space Shane had to work with from the previous administration, when a lot of those backloaded contracts from Galladay and some of those guys, and I'm not knocking the previous administration, this is not a knock to them, but it was just a fact. He didn't have anything. He didn't really have much to work with outside of Mark Lewinsky and a few veteran pickups that he picked up that actually played great snaps for us. So I just think a lot of Giants fans just need to calm down, give these guys a chance. We've seen where if you keep recycling front offices and coaches 2 years, 3 years, it doesn't really work. You look at the Ravens, you look at the Steelers, you look at the Niners, even I hate to say it, even the Cowboys,
and
the Eagles.
100%.
These guys have had the front offices in check. Now, have they been 100% right? The Cowboys are still trying to make it to the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying, they're to catch me out, but they've had a level of consistency. So to all these other fans, quote-unquote Giants fans, is ready to run people out off of a year where just the hurricane, the tsunami just wiped us all out, let's just forget about last year. We have a good team. Of course, it has to be played on the field, but we have a good team. So all these fans that are knocking these general manager Shane and knocking Dable, or Dable's not the right guy, and he running coaches out of here, we're not in those positions to even talk. We're not in those meetings. We're not in the practice field. Let these guys work with what they have. I think they're doing an awesome job. So for all these fans that are saying they need to be on the hot seat, to me, it's just ridiculous. So, fellas, thank you for the call, and, I'll listen off air.
Well said. And look, guys, you can't just give a GM 3 seasons. Like, you can't. That's not how you're going to have a successful franchise. Especially, to Jason's point, the first offseason he had was basically cleaning up a mess and not being able to add anything. So, look, I agree.
Back in the day, it used to be 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your GM used to get a minimum of 5. Your head coach would get 5. And now, the way the environment is and the competitiveness of everything, and obviously, the fans and the media turn up the heat. Nowadays, in a lot of situations, John, you don't get more than 3 years. Now, it's not fair. GMs will get more than 3. Coaches won't get more than 3
Sometimes
anymore.
coaches barely get 2.
Yeah. GMs used to get more than 5.
Yeah.
Now 5 is about their max. You basically got to shorten it by about 2 years for the coaches and by the GMs as compared to what they used to get. And that's because the heat just becomes so intolerable. It's just a different world.
And look, and I think the Mara and the Tisch families think the way Jason does, in that they know that if you keep having turnover, you're never going to sustain success. That's not how this works. John Mara hated the fact that he fired 3 straight coaches after just 2 seasons. Well, it's not the way to win and sustain success as an organization.
Show me the first NFL organization, because it will be the first, okay? There's never been one before, so if you can show me, you're going to pull it out of your imagination, that had a tremendous amount of turnover over a 6, 7, 8 year period and was able to consistently make the playoffs. It doesn't happen, okay? You will get a GM or a coach off of a winning season who leaves. They retire. Maybe they wanted to go home. They felt like, for whatever reason, you know what, this isn't a great situation. So you can get openings in those spots even after you win. It does happen sometimes.
Sure. Uh-huh.
But more often than not, okay, the disjointedness of that situation doesn't work out well.
And look, that doesn't mean the team goes 0-17 or some stupid thing like that, which you don't think is going to happen. Obviously, whatever, you never know. But just even from a conceptual standpoint, guys, they want to have continuity here. And I think that's the best way to have success. Now, you have to have continuity with the right people. You don't want to just leave the wrong people in place because for the sake of doing it. But I think the Giants think they have the right people in place, and they want to let these guys run their system and continue to build their organization and build their culture. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Jerome in Charlotte, Pearson. Jerome, you're up next, and then Tim, you're up after Jerome. What's going on, Jerome? Jerome going once. Jerome, put it back on hold, Pearson. See if you can get him locked in there. Let's go to Tim in Charleston in the meantime. Tim, what's up?
Hey, John and Paul, how you doing?
We're good. We heard from your compatriot Roy yesterday, Tim.
Yeah. And he didn't shout me out, but I'll do it for him today. Shout out to Roy. First, before I get to my more Giants points, I want to give kudos and tease Paul a little, or should I call him Pioneer Paul Dottino, on the great story he told yesterday about the 2007 season Super Bowl and rushing out on the field with the headlines.
Pioneer Paul, I like that. That's actually a great nickname, Pioneer Paul. I like that.
It would be, if I ever wrote a book, which I will never do because there's too much I can't put in there.
You can call it Pioneer Paul.
It would be a chapter, because it was even though I was not on air, so to speak, it's one of my most proud moments. It was very cool.
So a couple other things that you said, Paul, in that was, at one point, and I wrote it down here in quotes, it was, I was like James Bond, so we could also call you 00 Dottino now, right?
Pretty good.
Hey, man, I was sleuthing my way down to the field, and like I said, I wasn't supposed to be down there, but I made it.
Here's the problem, Tim. Bond is Mr. International. Paul Dottino is many things.
I'm domestic.
He is very domestic.
Yes.
And
Double D.
And not even like domestic to the United States. It's like domestic to the state of New Jersey.
And then the last thing that Paul said before I get to my real Giants points is, he said, quote, I'm lucky I didn't get tased or bitten by the dogs, so I'm just surprised. The dogs had tasers? But anyway,
Good line.
So that's
I tell you what, they had teeth.
yeah.
That they had.
Can't you get sharks with the lasers in them? Come on.
I'm going to go through a couple of quick things here. One is I went to your blue bracket yesterday evening.
Yeah.
And I would just tell people to maybe on your side to maybe try it out. There are a couple of little bugs in it where it's like, I won't go into them now. Maybe I'll email you later to save time on the show. But I was able to get through it, but I was a little worried a couple of times. And then I went back and listened to all the draft pick interviews, and they're all excellent. But I'll tell you, Theo Johnson, this guy's got a head on his shoulders, and he gets very direct, intelligent answers to the point on all the questions. I was super, super impressed by him, his the whole thing on that. And in terms of the first game of the season, I'd be happy to have Washington. But first week of the season, what I really love is being able to watch the game at 1 o'clock. I like the 1 o'clock games on opening week. It's just like no waiting, just get there, watch the pre-games, and then get right into the show. And just to quickly...
I agree, Tim, by the way. I'm with you. 1 o'clock on Sunday would be music to my personal ears as well.
Back to the blue bracket, it's easy, and most of us fans of I'm over 60, but even, so I go back to like 70. But, mostly, obviously the more modern players that we remember are going to get the votes. But I had to vote for Jimmy Patton because that was just like Paul pointed out, it was the first time, and Bob, the first time in NFL history that was done. And I felt like, who was the other one on that, OC or whoever it was? He's going to win. But so it was kind of like voting for the Libertarian in the presidential election. He
was up against Bavaro.
Bavaro, yeah. And
that's a pretty iconic play.
Yeah, and I have a Bavaro jersey, and I love Bavaro, but I felt like, I got to give Jimmy some respect, and, it's not going to affect the ballot one way or the other. So like I said, it's like voting for the Libertarian in the presidential election.
Sometimes you have to stick with your principles, Tim. It's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
So
you asked you, Pearson, bring it back for a second. Hey, Tim, did you have a Giants point you wanted to make besides the bracket? I'm sorry. You still there?
No, that was all I had.
Okay, I appreciate it, Tim. I remember you said he did a Giants one. Let me make sure we actually got to his Giants ones. And Pearson, we can screen one more. I'll make sure we get to two more.
I do want to go back between the late 80s and mid-90s. You had Walsh, Seifert, and Mariucci all made the playoffs with San Francisco. So that's three coaches over a decade. They only had one season they didn't make the playoffs. But their front office was still intact.
Well, no, but
and they were
doesn't count though. How many? Seifert was their coach for 8 years.
Yeah.
And Walsh was their coach for, 10? So, no, that doesn't count.
The point is, if you want to take a 10-year stretch from 88 to 97, they did have three different coaches help make it to the playoffs.
They also
I'm just trying to be fair for someone who might nitpick.
That's all. But that would be a BS nitpick. But Bill Walsh retired, first of all. He wasn't fired. Okay.
But I already mentioned that.
Yeah,
that you can have guys who would leave a successful team.
Yeah, that doesn't.
The fact is, though, that was also pre-salary cap. Okay. For the most part, because the salary cap didn't come into play until 93.
If you guys can find me a period of 3 or 4 coaches in a row where each coach was there for fewer than 4 seasons and the team was successful, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it.
I'm going back to my original statement. Show me the first time that it happened. But if you want to nitpick, someone could throw that up at you and say over 10 years they had 3 head coaches and only 1 season they didn't make the playoffs.
And I would call nonsense on that, but that's okay.
And that's okay. I'm trying to head off a nonsensical call at the pass.
Why would you call out Charlie like that?
Oh, wow. You were so nice to him yesterday.
I'm always nice to Charlie. I tease him, and he teases me. And
Go ahead.
Let's go to Steve in Atlanta. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hi, Steve.
Hey, John. How are you?
We're great.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to give a little reminiscence, and actually it goes back to also, Aaron Thomas, passed away a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that's one of my memories. To give me an idea, I used to go to the Giant games at Yankee Stadium and buy single tickets and going. And then in '64, that was the last season. They sold out that time. They then made everything season tickets, and we were able to get season tickets. And they would have been great for baseball. I was right behind home plate, but that was what we had on there. But seeing
that would have been the corner of the end zone if you were behind home plate.
Yes, that's exactly correct on here.
For those of you who don't know, and I'll let you finish in a second, the end zone was from home plate down to first base, along the first baseline, and it extended all the way into left field and left center field. That's the way the field was set up in the old Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, and the bleachers were actually decent seats with that arrangement.
You're right.
Yeah, and that's what I used to get all the time. But the season ticket was down there. Well, anyhow, I mean, those were great for. I got to see Gale Sayers that year, and I saw Jimmy Brown was in the last game.
That's cool.
And when you see them at that point, you know, the openings and how small they were and what they could get through. That's my memories completely. It was a lousy season. We only won 2 games there at that point. But the best thing was that last game we lost 52-20. And it would have been 21, but they didn't do the extra point. But the very last play was Aaron Thomas catching a pass in the end zone. And if you can look at the tape, I am the very first person right in that corner.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That is so cool.
Yes, I was 3 feet away, and I've always remembered that. There are 2 memories on. One is with me when I went to Syracuse and played basketball and played against Dave Bing. And when I play against him, that's when I understood what a pro was. And then seeing the ball being caught by Thomas in the end zone. Those are 2 things that you are not an athlete compared to these guys.
In those days, because the stands were so close to the field, a lot of fans would pour onto the field after the game, too.
That was it. Yes, that's what I did. We got down there, got a piece of the end zone. There was a wooden goalpost on there. So, yeah, that was the great part. The lousy part was seeing so many losses after having so many great years.
Yeah,
before.
I know.
Yeah.
I appreciate the call. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Finish up. No, you're fine. Finish up.
Okay, yeah. The only thing is just talking about Jim Brown a second with it on here, because we had Pee Wee football before that time, and I grew up in Manhasset, and his agent was a guy named Ken Malloy. So he used to come to all of our Pee Wee games. So we used to I had Joe Morrison and Del Shopner, and Jimmy Brown was there every year.
Wow.
And whatever people think about Jimmy Brown in the later years, that guy was the nicest person. He was the nicest one to us kids. I couldn't think of anything better. I always have fond memories of him, Del Shopner, and Joe Morrison at that time. Those were my memories at that point. The Giants were great, and it was a real fun time, even though it was a lousy year.
Appreciate the call, Steve. Good stuff, my friend. Always good reminiscing there, Paul.
You know what was fun about Jim Brown? I got to meet him a number of times years later because he was like a dignitary for the Browns. Like Eli is for the Giants right now. He's
I had
ambassador.
a chance to meet him. I went with, I think it was with one of our camera guys, either Mike Becton or Mike Debbie. And we went to the rookie symposium they have at the Hall of Fame with the Giants rookies, and he spoke to the rookie class in like a small room, and we were there for that. That was pretty cool.
And tell me if you felt the same way. He was cut out of stone. He was sturdy as a rock.
Yeah, I mean he was like with a cane and everything at that point. So he was on the older side.
All right, but even many years after he retired, you would be like, wow, look at the shape that this guy is in. He was a physical aberration. They just didn't make him like him back in the day, and quite frankly, I'm not sure they make him like him now even.
All right, so we're going to go through the second half of that bracket on tomorrow's show, Paul, along with another schedule preview.
Let's
but
do
we
it.
have one more call I want to get to before we say goodbye is Randy in California. Randy, what's up?
Hey, guys. Good afternoon. How you doing?
We're great,
Hello.
Randy. What's on your mind?
Not too much. Hey, I've been waiting for everybody, all the draft stuff to kind of, die down. I've been wanting to talk to you guys. With the receivers we have now, Daniel Jones wasn't exactly being able to process because of the offensive line. And he's kind of like a drop back, take a look, and then run. Do we really think that he can process, fast enough like some of these other quarterbacks? They look to run to throw, but he just looks to run type of quarterback. You know what I mean?
I think you hope so. I think we need to see him in a better situation to know that for sure. And I think you hope you get that this year. Randy, honestly, look, he's going to be the quarterback this year. He's going to be out there.
Sure.
I know some people, maybe the backup will compete and win the starting job. If Daniel Jones is healthy, he's going to start in week 1, okay? I'd be shocked if that wasn't the case. So are there some situations where you might want to see him get the ball down the field a little bit more and get it down the field a little bit quicker? I agree with that. Would I like to see him scramble to pass instead of scramble to run a little bit more? Sure. I'm with. I don't think that's a processing thing, though. I think that's more of a keeping your eyes downfield as you get out of the pocket. Processing, to me, is how when you're dropping back to throw in the pocket, how quickly you can get through your progressions and get the ball to the right area based on what the defense is showing you as quickly as you can. That's what I think of processing, rather than keeping your eyes up when you're kind of scrambling around away from a pass rush.
I think ultimately – go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, because he always looks to just run, you know what I mean? So he's not programmed, so you almost have to I like Dan Jones. I hope he balls out and we do good, right? I don't care. Whoever's back there, I just want a good quarterback, right? No matter who. I just wonder if because he's been in the league this long, if it's too late for him to change that a little bit.
No, it's a good question, Randy.
I was just looking last year at the next-gen stats for time to throw. And, Jones was at 2.73 seconds. And I know it was a limited amount of games because he got hurt. But when you look at all the other quarterbacks ahead of him, I mean, think about how ridiculous this was. Justin Fields was 3.2 time to throw. Now, again, you buy time with your legs before you throw the ball, and that's all going to affect those numbers. But if the Giants' rebuilt offensive line can give him anywhere near, how about 2.9 instead of 2.7, I think that in itself, that would put them, let's see, in terms of quarterbacks last year, there were 2, 4, 6, 8, looks like 8 quarterbacks who had 3.0 or more times to throw based on next-gen stats last year, okay? If you can get him somewhere 2.8 and up, that should make a huge difference.
Yeah, now it's just retraining him to, you know what I mean? Because he always looks to just run. He never really...
Well, that's what he was told to do, though.
Yeah, he does it. Right, yeah, because of the offensive line.
Right, they told him.
And not just the offensive line, also, they haven't exactly had the most dynamic set of receivers out there either.
No. And so... you like to think with the upgraded weapons, and then hopefully if the line can give on the average another quarter of a second, per pass play, that should open up an awful lot for him.
Like, for example, Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor, this is a Pro Football Focus stat. Average time to throw was virtually the same. Tyrod Taylor was 2.91 seconds. Daniel Jones was at 2.89 seconds. So,
next gen says 2.73 for Jones, but
that's average time. What, in pocket? What
just average time to throw. It doesn't.
Okay. Well, again, people time this stuff in different ways.
I know.
But the point I was going to make, the actual number is not important. That point that I'm trying to make, with those two guys being exactly the same, is that all right? Well, is that a product of the quarterback or is that a product of what's going on around them? You know what I mean? Now the difference is that Tommy DeVito was much higher than that, right? Which makes sense. He's a younger quarterback. He's going to hold the ball longer. He was all the way at 3.09 seconds, right? So it was a full 0.2 of a second because again, the younger quarterback's not going to process as quickly back to that number. He's going to hold the ball a little bit longer, and that's the type of stuff that happens. And the offensive line also played a little bit better towards that part of the season. But, look, I think there is a way, and we saw it a couple years ago, I think running will always be part of Daniel Jones's game. I think it should be because he's good at it and it helps the team.
Uh-huh.
But, yes, when he starts getting moving, I would not mind him throwing the ball a little bit more than running it, though running was a big part of his success.
No question.
Right.
Buy time, run to throw. I agree with John on that 100%.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
I'm looking right here.
No, I appreciate the call. Good stuff. Thank you, Randy.
John, I'm looking at next-gen stats for 2022 during the playoff season.
Yeah.
And they only list here, and maybe there's other listings that you have, but next-gen stats only list the top 20 quarterbacks.
You're looking at average time to throw?
I'm looking at, let me see. Let me go back here a second. I'm looking for average time to throw in 2022.
I can look that up too.
Let me see if that's next-gen stats has it. It's a little bit more difficult to navigate this. But let's see. Here we go. 2022, average time to throw. And I'm curious because, we've never really gone into those comparisons. But let's see. Daniel Jones Now, if you want to compare apples to apples, it was 2.73 last year. The playoff season, Next Gen Stats has him at 2.9.
Yeah, and PFF has him at 3.02, so almost 0.3 of a second longer.
And Next Gen says 0.2 of a second longer.
And again, it's the same player, so that tells me that has probably more to do with the lack of protection than anything else from one year to the other. Now, you actually want that number to be low. Like, if you look, Paul, for average time to throw at the top of the list, you're going to have most of the best quarterbacks. Like, just looking at the 2022 season, for example, Tom Brady, number 1. All right? Trevor Lawrence, number 2. Tua, number 3. Joe Burrow, number 4. Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, Stafford, all in the top 10. So you want that number down, not because of the poor protection, but you want the quarterback to be on time, read the defense quickly, and get the ball out. That's what you want out of your quarterback. Now, you'll notice all those guys I mentioned, they're pocket guys. Guys that run, to your previous point, are always going to have longer average time to throws.
Correct.
Like if you go to the guys at the bottom of this list.
And they also have better receiving cores than what the Giants have had.
Like Justin Fields, just like last year in 2022. He was at the bottom of this list. Deshaun Watson's at the bottom of this list. Lamar Jackson's at the bottom of this list. So guys that are going to run around a little bit more are always going to have longer average time to throws.
Right. So if we want, in theory, Jones to do a little more running to throw, then you would want the number to bump up a little bit.
Yes, that would make the number bump up. That's correct.
So let's see. Again, they were 0.2 of a second or 0.3 of a second longer in the playoff season. Is that a coincidence that the Giants went to the playoffs that year and Jones, had a really solid year? I don't think that's a coincidence.
Paul, good stuff.
Yeah, it was fun, John.
That was Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. Scheduled tomorrow. Stay tuned to Giants.com for more announcements when it comes to the 100th season celebration. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. For Pearson Butler, we'll see you tomorrow, 12:30, Big Blue Kickoff Live.